To the extent that we live our lives in a manner that is consistent with the truth in our heart, we thrive.
Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hey everyone, we have our favorite co-host ever of shows, Dr. Paul Meier, with us today to do a roundtable with Dr. Paul Meier. Hi, Paul.
Hi. How you doing, Kristen?
I'm doing really good. Now that we've made these to where we do them once a month, because you and I are the same. Like, we will just work ourselves into the ground.
Yeah.
So now that we do these once a month, when I see them on the calendar, I'm like, oh God, I get to talk to Paul. Yay.
Yeah, me too. And the reason, for those of you in our regular listening family, the reason is that we wanted to have, these podcasts are not like played weekly at live for somebody to listen to or things like that.
Exactly.
We record podcasts that are usually about an hour long, and we put them in a can, and we call it, but we put them in storage where, 10 or 15 years from now,
Exactly.
I hope if you want to know about one of these topics, you can pull it up and listen to it. And so now, once we had about 50 or 60, I think,
we had over 100.
Recorded. Do we have over 100?
Yeah. From when you
once
first
we got
started.
to it, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Once we got to 100, then we're just adding one more a month because, there's 100 of them there's 100 hours of them for you to listen to if you want to.
Exactly.
And then we're covering update ones like today's.
Exactly.
So tell us
today
about that.
We're going to talk about the coronavirus, and what we don't want to do is spread any more panic than there is, because it's, there's a lot of therapists that are calling me and saying, oh my gosh, I have so many patients coming in and their anxiety has been triggered, their depression there's so many things that they're having to counsel about around what we're reading about and hearing about in the media. So we wanted to do a show today to alleviate some of the stress that's out there and do a sort of a PSA around mental health related to this topic. So Paul has put together some terrific facts, and these are facts about the virus, and we're gonna go through those.
Yeah, and help get it in perspective too. And the more perfectionistic a person is, whether you're OCD or just a mild perfectionist, but the more perfectionistic a person is, the more, and Kristen, you and I are both more than average on perfectionism.
Right.
But the more perfectionistic we are, the easier it is to catastrophize.
Yes.
And think, oh no, the world's coming to an end, and things like that.
Exactly. So I like that you put this together, leading causes of death per year in the USA, just so that we have some perspective.
Yeah, so we'll start with that so that we'll get it in perspective. Leading causes of death per year in the last couple of years in the United States. Okay, heart disease, 635,000 citizens of the United States die each year from heart disease. 600,000 a year die from cancer. 161,000 a year. These aren't necessarily listed in the order of highest to lowest. I just, I wrote them down from research. And so cancer is 600,000. Accidents of all kinds that are unintentional are 161,000. And I think something like 60,000 of those are car accidents. But accidents of all kinds that are unintentional, 161,000 deaths a year. Respiratory disease, 155,000 deaths in America per year. Stroke, 142,000 deaths in the United States per year. Opioid overdoses, many of which are accidental, which is really, a pet peeve of mine as a psychiatrist, because, and I'm glad the government is stricter now, because now before I give a benzodiazepine like Xanax or clonazepam or any of those things to anybody, I have to look at the federal list of every individual and see if they're getting any opioids. Because you shouldn't take both, because if you take both, it can kill you.
Right.
Because they enhance each other. I'm not saying it will kill you, but it makes it more likely. But opioid overdoses, including, I bet some of those are suicide, but I bet more than half are accidental or because the cartel like pain pushers.
Right.
And a lot of pain doctors are real honest, good people.
That's right.
But a lot of them are just they're drug pushers, just like the cartel from Mexico, because the most common pain medicine that they give is fentanyl, which is like 100 times stronger than heroin, and it gives you a high and relieves pain, and it makes addicts out of people. And they could give other ones that don't do that, but they give that one so they can make a lot of money and have you keep coming back for more. And so if you're on that one, be sure to go see a different pain doctor. And I think the really good pain doctors will use things like Lamictal, Topamax, the different GABA medicines, Neurontin, and then there's 3 antidepressants. Whether you're depressed or not, there's 3 antidepressants that help get rid of pain: Cymbalta, Pristiq, and Fedzima. So I put people that are on opioids on those things and don't give them benzos, and most of them are able to get off their opioids just from medicines that are not addicting. Anyway, that's $65,000. That's a separate program. And then Alzheimer's, $116,000. Diabetes, $80,000 a year. The flu, okay, from the common flu and the pneumonia that follows it frequently, 52,000 a year in America die from the flu. So get that in perspective. Remember that one. Okay, kidney disease, 50,000. Suicide, 45,000. Septicemia in the bloodstream, 40,000. Liver disease and cirrhosis, 38,000. Murders, 16,000. I think it's actually probably higher than that. Deaths in the first 2 months of coronavirus in the United States, 0. So get that in perspective. Okay. Now,
Yep.
I mean, it could grow. And I listen to the CDC. I really respect the CDC. And Johns Hopkins is the top medical, in my opinion, it's the top medical research facility in America. And when I went to residency in the 1700s, it wasn't quite that long ago. But when I did my psychiatry residency many years ago,
back when we invented fire, yes.
yes, many years ago, back in the 70s actually. Then Hopkins was number 1 even back then in psychiatry, and Duke, where I went, was number 2, and Harvard was number 3. But Hopkins was number 1 even then. So Johns Hopkins has been staying on top of things and advising our administration, and is happy with what the administration is doing, and the CDC. And there's about 19 experts, and the experts are all contributing to the plan. And I'll get to what the plan is in a minute. But there's some people that really want to catastrophize it. There's some people, evil people, who really want to scare everybody and make it seem a lot worse than it is. And then there's probably some other evil people that want you to think it's going to stay 0, and I hope I'm not an evil person. I know Kristen's not. And so we just want to give you the potential things to prepare for, and the worst case scenario and the best case scenario, and the facts. For example, Kristen, you mentioned to me right before we started about a comedian who went on a cruise, and he tell me what happened. He got off the cruise safely, and he was
on.
Tell me what happened.
Yeah, he was on one of the cruise ships with Holland America, and he's on them all the time to do shows. They hire him to do comedy shows, and he's known as the mental health comedian. just
Do you want to say who
understand.
it is or not?
Yeah, Frank King. He
Oh,
needs
okay.
some good press because he was on a ship that was not one of the ones. It was not one of the ships that had the coronavirus infection. Not.
And he's a really good comedian, right?
Yeah,
I
he's
mean, you've heard
really
him
good.
before
And the
everything.
amount of work that Frank does to help people with mental illness is unbelievable. Half of it, I mean, and more than half of it, he does pro bono. I mean, he just is a
Yeah,
wonderful.
he's a real
He's
compassionate
yeah.
guy.
He's
He's a
a
great comedian and a compassionate guy that tries to
yeah.
help people.
Exactly.
So
And
what happened to him?
he's a comedian, okay? Like his job
Mm-hmm.
is to make jokes. Now, he happened to be going to China, Japan, the Philippines. That was where the cruise ship, that's where they were going to play dates as well as do
Mm-hmm.
things on the ship. So
Mm-hmm.
so it got caught up in the news around the other ships that did have people that were infected, that were quarantined. And so because he was just happened to be in the same area, China,
But his
Japan,
ship didn't
his
have
ship
any infected
his
people,
ship
though, right?
did not. And that so far did not, and this is a bit ago, but they weren't allowed to, a lot of countries that they tried to dock in wouldn't let them come in for good reason. They're
Yeah,
trying to contain
sure.
it and so on. So he,
Yeah,
being Frank, got on the news for several things, talking about he was on the ship longer, obviously, than he wanted to, because they did have to wait around. So they did make it through,
yeah,
quarantine periods anyway.
yeah,
He
right.
was saying, well, yeah, I'm going to have to break out of here, to get home and da da da. But he's a
And
comedian.
he was just joking.
This is
Yeah,
joking, but this is how much media and us latch on to information and then catastrophize it and then demonize people. He has had to change his phone number. He's had uh, people just threatening
because
his
because
life, saying
the
that he's somehow,
exaggerators,
yeah, exactly.
the exaggerators who want everything to look like the world's coming to an end, we're all going to
Yep.
go broke, half the world's going to die. The exaggerators knew they knew the truth, but
Yep.
they said that the comedian escapes from like imprisonment or something like that for not even having coronavirus, and then
First
the
of all,
other
that's
yeah,
impossible because
yeah,
everyone there is like
yeah,
tagged, watched at every airport. They
yeah,
know who his name is. They knew
yeah,
they would not have let the CDC
yeah,
was on top of this the
yeah,
whole way.
right. And then when he heard that, he said, "No, that's not true. I didn't. I made a joke about it, but no, that's not true." And so then the other networks that don't want things to be exaggerated exposed the exaggeration of the ones that did exaggerate it. And so people that exaggerate it are really angry at him and black
Blacklisting him.
not blackmailing, blacklisting him,
But
and
also,
so he's not getting jobs
right, he's not
now
gotten a few
because he
jobs.
told the truth. He shouldn't have told the truth.
Right, Lois, what was he supposed to say? He was
I'm glad he
asked to be
did,
on
but
the news. But the
yeah,
thing is that the part of the problem is, it was used as clickbait to cause more panic and pandemonium over something that wasn't the truth. Then people that are paranoid, whatever, the amount of hate that I have seen come across just social media about him and at him.
I don't think they were paranoid. I think they were sociopathic
Yes.
and wanted to create distress.
They started sending hate to a little bit to this network. Just the stuff that was said, I won't even repeat because it's horrifying, and threatening him, his family, his animals. I mean, I think we don't understand as a society, many of us don't understand how horrible it is to be a target on social media. I had a conversation with Frank and he said, I used to be kind of like, well, okay, somebody had some hate on social media, they'll get over it. And he's like, no, now I understand why this causes people to be suicidal, to commit suicide, all of that, because it all came at him over something that was not true.
Yeah.
Not
and
even
most people
possible.
Most people in our culture would be shocked if they knew
Yep.
how much evil there is in the world.
Yep.
There was an interview of 100,000 people walking through shopping malls where they asked them different moral things. And one of the questions was, would you steal from your neighbor if you wouldn't get caught? And 75% said they would.
Oh my gosh.
Being a psychiatrist, and I've written over 100 books that sold 8 million copies in 30 languages, and then our podcast goes to 170 nations. Mm-hmm. And so I have patients that fly here from the royalty, or that the royalty of Saudi Arabia fly here for medicine checks, even though it's we're a Christian-based. We see all people of all religions, and we don't offend any. But even though we're a Christian-based nonprofit group, but because of my books and things, they there's people that they fly here. That I've seen patients from Israel. I've seen patients from France and a lot of different countries that come to see me for medication evaluation, and so I hear a lot of things behind the scenes that nobody else hears. I hear from even people that are with royalty all the time, and there are a number of people that hope coronavirus spreads and kills a lot of people, and that it drives our country and even the world into financial chaos, because that would help their candidate get elected. And I got to be real careful what I say, because there's evil people there's evil people in both political parties and independents too. Yep. And so I'm not saying it's all one thing or another, but there's evil people like that. And China, where the virus came from, China and Iran have bioweapon labs where they're creating different diseases that they could drop from airplanes and stuff. Even a single propeller airplane, they could drop. There's things they could drop that would over a city that would wipe out 100,000 people, and so they create bioweapons and stuff. And when China was asked, because it's some people in the know think that it started at their bio lab, because the city that it started in is where they have it, and China and Iran have the highest incidence of it. China's claiming only 2.3% are dying, and Iran is admitting that 20% of theirs are dying. And when China was asked whether it started there, they didn't even deny it. They said, we don't know where it started. So it could be that. Well, and China, the Chinese leaders believe they have way too many people. So they don't want to go broke, but we don't need to get into all the political stuff. Let's just dump the political stuff.
Right.
Let's get back to coronavirus. But I'm just saying that don't overreact. The reason I'm sharing this isn't for political reasons. It's to help you. Don't listen to the people that say the world's coming to an end. The sky's falling like Chicken Little, and don't listen to the people that say we'll never have a death in America from it. Because they're both wrong. Okay.
Exactly. And please don't participate.
But in one more thing, in South Korea, the president didn't want to offend China and didn't want to offend anybody, and so he left the borders open and let people come in and go from China. And they're having a horrible outbreak. They had just 51 cases a week ago, and they had 16,000 cases yesterday. And they'll probably have 160,000 in a week. And so, we're going to have to block. Our administration probably already has blocked travel back and forth to South Korea.
Right.
And
right, South Korea.
Plus, the coronavirus can stay alive on objects for something like 4 or 5 days. I've got that in the research here, and so it doesn't even have to be person to person. So, even if you bought things from there that got here quick, there's chances of it. So our administration, as soon as it got out, they shut the borders to the countries that had a significant number, and the administration was widely criticized by some of the exaggerators and called racism. They were called racists and everything. And the decision is made by the CDC, by Johns Hopkins, by the administration. I mean, they're all making these decisions together. They have meetings every day. And but they were called racist because they were blocking Asians. You know, they're prejudiced against Asians by blocking their entrance to the country. You know, and it's starting to break out in South American countries, and they're not as financially well off as the United States. And so there may be a lot of people in Mexico and South that have it. And so, you know, we might have to be even tighter with the southern border than the administration has been in order to prevent that from killing Americans, you know, making it spread in America. And so it's going to, you know, there's going to be all sorts of people accusing people. But anyway, so and the only reason we're saying that, not for political reasons, just so you won't overreact. Okay. So,
right. Yeah. Let me say this real quick. Another thing to think about is, yes, you need to pay attention to what's going on, but please, before you jump on a bandwagon of even thinking negatively about someone who's been on one of these cruise ships or who has been infected or anything like that, try to remember that this is a human being that we're talking about. And, you know, take what you read with a grain of salt, because a lot of the time it is over exaggerated to sell a story and to get traffic on the internet and so on. It is not always the truth, or it's a snippet of the truth. And so not participating by not taking those things seriously when you read them, not spreading them around, spreading negativity around, especially on your social media. You have no idea what one click send can do to someone's life if you send the wrong story out that isn't true or not all the facts are there. That's what is causing so many of our mental health problems right now, is the fact that kind of stuff goes on all the time, but especially on something like this.
There are many coronavirus illnesses, including the common cold. The common cold is a coronavirus. Okay. And we've had common colds for thousands of years, and we still haven't found a cure. So there probably won't be a cure found. You know, I mean, hopefully there might. You know, but I don't think there's been found a cure for any coronavirus, because you just don't find cures for viruses. There's no cure for the
common cold. Yeah. So
there's no cure for the common cold.
Putting this into perspective, you know.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
You can get, I mean, they do create vaccines, and once you get a cold, then you're less likely to get them in the future. If you, there's things you can do, like have a zinc tablet. In fact, I'd encourage everybody in America to do that. Get some zinc over the counter, like Zicam, or, I don't want to promote any one brand, but get some zinc and have a little bit as a vitamin every day. And if you do, there's a 33% less chance that you'll come down with any virus, probably including coronavirus or colds or anything. And then if you do get any kind of viral infection, it'll be on an average of 33% less severe. So some zinc daily would be a good idea. And that's in WebMD. Don't believe anything. When people tell me something, I see a couple hundred patients total, and for 15 minutes each, and sometimes longer, not for therapy, but for meds and stuff. But when they tell me something that's bizarre, I said, well, where'd you read it? And if they say on the internet, I say, oh, then it's not true. Anything, and I'm exaggerating, I'm being funny. Then I tell them I'm just joking, but because I say anything on the internet, it's not true. But if you do go to WebMD, and you can do that, you don't have to be a member, you don't have to be a doctor, but doctors go to WebMD, and they'll have a lot of studies where the patient doesn't know what they're getting, and the doctor doesn't know what they're getting. So a third of people will get an empty pill, a third will get the thing they're testing, and a third will get something else that's similar. And then at the end of a couple months, they'll see the actual results, because there's things where people claim it, turns your brain green and all that sort of thing, and it turns out to be good for you, So, but that's true. That's where I got that information about zinc. So, okay, then number 2, prevention of coronavirus. One of the things that I mentioned was, to have some zinc every day. Another one is just the standard recommendations to prevent any kind of viral infection is to wash your hands regularly. You can get little alcohol swabs that you can carry in your pocket, and when you do, I don't go to that extreme, but a lot of people do, and I don't blame them. But if you carry something where you're going to grocery shopping and you're dragging that cart that 1,000 people before you have dragged, and you wipe your hands off when you're done or something like that with a little towelette, that's not a bad idea. Cover your mouth and your nose when you cough and sneeze, because probably the main way it spreads is through coughing, although it can spread a lot of ways. And thoroughly cooking, when you cook meat and eggs, cook it thoroughly, because it is transmitted through animals. All these coronaviruses can be transmitted from animals, and avoid close contact with anyone that shows symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing and sneezing. And I think it was I don't want to give a fact that's not accurate, but I think it was in South Korea, but I'm not sure where they did a coronavirus test on 20,000 people that had these kinds of symptoms, which you can have from a lot of diseases, and 800 of the 20,000 were coronavirus positive.
Exactly. So something to think about that. So some, if there's more testing that's going to be done and so on, here's what can happen. So someone could come up and test positive, as Paul just said, because there are so many other things around coronavirus, not just this flu, right?
Yeah,
someone can test
colds
positive for
and all sorts of
something,
stuff.
and then that
Cold,
could
flu.
be a cold, right? Or it could be it could
Yeah.
be anything, not this particular
Allergies.
virus.
It could be allergies.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden the media gets a hold of it and villainizes this person. This person gets fired from jobs. This person's family is targeted. It made me, when I was listening to my friend talk about what's happened to him, I thought, and I'm not making a grand leap here, this is serious. Why was it so important for Princess Diana to go and hug patients with HIV, to hold their hands? It made me realize how important it was that she did that work, because I was
that one
around.
could only be transmitted blood to blood.
Exactly. But it's the same kind of way that, people I grew up during that time when AIDS, was, first, and we don't act that way anymore about it, but people were just villainized over this. And so the same thing can happen, but worse now, because we have social media and we have what's happening in the news and so on. So be so careful.
And those of you who are Asian Americans or Asians, and we go to 170 countries, but Asians in other countries, I hate to say it, but there's some places where Asians are getting isolated and stuck in corners and even beaten up. And like there's an outbreak in northern Italy, and there's been some things like that, and it's horrible. It's horrible because they're not any more likely than anybody else to get it. It just happens that it happened mostly in China and Iran, which probably because they're creating it. And it leaked out, or either they wanted it out on purpose, which I doubt, or it leaked out. But anyway, it could be either way. Okay, number 3, the Centers for Disease Control. I trust the CDC. I'm a doctor, and I've gotten their advice and help on a lot of things. They do have one doctor who is the sister of a former assistant attorney general who, it probably is honest, but tends to see things as a little more negative than the others. But that may be just her, honest opinion, but anyway, but I trust the CDC, and I trust Johns Hopkins for sure. I trust the 19 leaders from other medical fields who are all coming to these conclusions together what to do. And the CDC said that the United States should prepare for a likely epidemic. It may not be a big one, and it may not be a little one. And I heard our administration just say yesterday during a press conference that they're doing everything they can to prevent that, but that it's possible.
Right.
And and large groups of people have business meetings now, and they're recommending that you do it by Skype instead of flying to a centralized location.
Exactly.
I have a board meeting. Coming up next month, and I notified them yesterday when I started doing all this research that I just wanted to be there by Skype. I didn't want to fly there, and most of them accepted that. But one of them got upset with me, that I didn't want to fly. I'm almost 75 years old. In May I'm going to turn 75, although I feel 45. And my mom still beat me at dominoes when she was 95, so I still feel young. But if you're the people that the death rate is a lot higher for people 65 and older from any coronavirus type of serious illness. And so I'm almost 75, so I'm just not going to fly anymore unless it's an absolute emergency.
Yeah. I mean, I'm changing my travel. I may not go to a conference that's coming up because it's a long flight. It's across the United States for me, and it's happening this is going on. I may not go. And I may just interview people that are going to be there, but I'll do it from my office. And then same thing with, I've got another conference that it's about a 4-hour drive. Normally I would fly there, but you know what? I'm going to drive instead.
I had a conference just recently, Kristen, where I told them that I didn't want to fly, and they had the conference anyway, and they did it by Skype, and I was on a great big screen. Yep. And they even, and so I could see them and hear them. They had microphones. They went up and asked questions. It was just as though I was there, and it went just fine, so they could see me and ask me questions, and we could talk to each other, and I could see them, and they could see me, with modern technology. So it worked out just fine. Exactly. But what's going to happen if it does spread significantly in America is and you need to make plans too. Like you should get some food and enough to last at least a couple of days that can't spoil. Canned goods, frozen goods, things like that. The dried foods. So you don't have to. In Italy, where they had a rapid breakout, they showed the grocery stores are empty. Because people rushed and climbed over each other to buy everything out. So don't wait. Get enough. Don't assume it's going to get real bad, but it doesn't hurt to have 2 or 3 days worth of stuff saved up. Because in certain areas, like there's one city in South Korea where people they all stay in their homes. You can go out in the street and it's empty. So everybody stays in their homes and they eat their own food and that they've stored up and things, and they go out and get stuff if they have to. So, another thing is that a lot of viruses, like the flu, come in seasons. So as soon as the weather warms up, it's gone.
Right.
And so the CDC, Johns Hopkins, all those people told our administration that there's a decent chance that in a couple of months it'll die down. But that means it would still come back every year, but it would die down. In the meantime, they're doing everything they can, and they're being really pressured by the administration, but they're doing it anyway. They're doing everything they can. It usually takes a year to come up with a vaccine, but they're trying to get it done in 6 months, because if it does die down in 2 months, then they'd have 6 months before the flu season and the next flu season in the fall to have people get vaccinated and prevent us from getting it in America. Unfortunately, we're going to have to donate money, and we will, to poor countries, because they won't be able to afford to get the vaccine.
Right.
And unless people contribute. But if we can make it through the next couple months, and then of course the administration said that it may die down in a couple months, and and was just raked over the coals for lying and everything, that it might die down. But they were just quoting what all these experts are telling him from Hopkins and all those places. So anyway, in the schools may have smaller classes. That's what the CDC announced in the last couple of days. Colleges might have smaller classes, so there's not so many people, that word could spread. And if it gets real bad, the classes, the public schools, and the colleges and universities, if it got real bad, would everything would be online. Right. They could still have all their stuff, and we would do that as psychiatrists. A lot of psychiatrists do that online already.
Thank goodness
people would
we have
they could
telehealth.
Skype us.
Exactly.
Yeah. We could do it online and call in the prescriptions and wire them to their pharmacy and all that sort of thing. But anyway, people will do a lot of stuff by Skype if it gets real bad, and colleges will divide their students into smaller classes and stuff. That's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. I'm just saying, worst case scenario, that could happen, and we'll still be okay. We're still going to be okay. There'll probably never be as many deaths from coronavirus as there is from the flu every year.
Right, exactly.
But there could be. Okay, and then symptoms of coronavirus are pretty similar to other viral illnesses. Okay, here it is. Symptoms of coronavirus. Common signs include respiratory symptoms like fever, cough, shortness of breath, breathing difficulties, and then in severe cases, it can turn into pneumonia and acute respiratory syndrome, kidney failure, and death. Now, here's how it's different from the flu. When you have the flu, you get muscle aches and you're vomiting and stuff like that. That doesn't usually happen with coronavirus. You're not getting muscle aches and vomiting and nausea. So if you feel sick and you're vomiting, thank God.
Right, because it's not going to be that.
Yeah, if you have muscle aches and you're vomiting, thank God you're safe.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't traveled or been around anyone who's been sick, but I did. Yeah. My neighbors had the stomach flu, and they were out for a week and a half, and I was out for 24 hours. Thank God it was only 24 hours. But yeah. I had somebody at the grocery store that heard someone else talking about, having the stomach flu. And then there was people were just, I felt like people were going to start pelting rocks at them as they left. And I knew this fact that that is not one of the symptoms of that particular strain of flu. And I thought, my God, people it's a scary, that mob mentality of fear and panic really is frightening.
Now here's something else that probably will and maybe should scare you a little bit. Coronaviruses, like some of the other severe coronaviruses, there's a number of coronaviruses, but the coronavirus that's the current one. Coronaviruses are zoonotic. What that means is they're transmitted between animals and people. Mm. So it's not just humans that get it; animals get it. Detailed investigations found that, for example, SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome. Coronavirus, SARS is one that spread around the world in 2003. And that's something people that are young may not remember, that about every 25 or 30 years, there's a coronavirus that's a serious one that travels around the world and, kills quite a few people. And this is just the next one, and there might be another one 30 years from now. But anyway, the SARS was transmitted from cats to humans. That SARS, and it caused flu-like symptoms. You couldn't really tell SARS from the flu. And SARS had a death rate of 15%. But people over 65 and older had a much higher death rate. And then there's MERS. MERS is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus, and that was mostly isolated or located in the Arab Emirates, in Jordan, and for some reason South Korea again, and that had a death rate of 35%. So 35% of people that got it died. Okay, now coronavirus China is claiming a 2.3% death rate, and the chances that they're telling the truth are about 1 in a million, I'd say, maybe 2 million, because they never do. And in fact, a doctor who was doing research in China, risked his life by telling the truth to some scientists in America, and died a week later.
Right.
And they claimed he died of coronavirus, but
and we have no idea.
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Well,
and we're not causing panic
that's true.
by saying that. But yeah, there's so much that you don't know.
Yeah. In Iran, it was 20%, but so far in Europe and the countries that have it, it's probably not going to be higher than 5%. I don't think, but still, it's at least 2.5 or 3%. But anyway, so the symptoms for coronavirus are not flu-like, but they can be transmitted from different animals. They suspect, and SARS was more serious, and 15% died, and it did have flu-like symptoms, and then MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, came from camels, dromedary animals. So camels, it came from camels to humans, and it had a death rate of 35%. That's Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, and that it went through the Middle East in 2012, but didn't spread to the rest of the world, mostly Jordan, United Arab Emirates, and South Korea, and right now people don't get that hardly at all. Some people test positive for MERS without ever having any symptoms, and probably people test positive for coronavirus that never get sick, but carry it for a while, and so that's why you want to limit people coming from the countries where it's widespread, and that's not being racist. It's just protecting America, and a lot of people are globalists. They believe there shouldn't be any nations. We should all just be one big nation, and so it sort of rubs them wrong for us to be real strict about who comes in and out of our country.
Right.
But it's the right thing to do.
It's not about, for, decent, kind human beings, it's not about, this race, it has nothing to do with that. It's okay. Continents are big islands, and how do we keep an island safe? We close off things that that can spread. It's a matter of safety. It is not, not just the fact that we're big islands. I probably just made myself sound like an idiot, but there's that, and then there's also countries in between. There are reasons for having those kinds of safety protocols involved, and it's for the public's health and safety. It's not always about bashing people of other races and religious beliefs and political beliefs and so on.
Atlanta, they did. Here's an actual fact. In Atlanta, they did a study that they saw how many people that were coming through Atlanta's airport one day, and to see how many of them had flu-like symptoms or cough, or those kind of symptoms like cough and fever and things like that. And there were 200 that came through that day,
right? And
they tested them. 200 travelers coming through Atlanta's airport recently showed potential symptoms connected to the new virus that's spreading around the globe, and they were. I think they're doing that at airports now. Pretty much, they're trying to do that everywhere, and they were designated for home quarantine. So they were asked to stay in their homes for 2 weeks just to make sure they didn't have it. Pretty soon, there's going to be a test. Right now, you can't just if you go to your doctor and get tested for coronavirus, you won't know until about 2 days later whether you have it.
Yeah.
And something that they're trying to create as fast as possible is a test where you can go to find out if you have strep throat in about 5 minutes. You can go to your doc in a box that you don't even know, and he can not just look at your throat and see if there's white spots back there, but which would show that you did. But they can give you a strep test and tell you, 20 minutes later, no, you don't have strep. You can find out if you're pregnant, 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later. And so I think they will come up pretty quick with a test where they can find out quickly if somebody has it or not. And that'll really, really help.
What makes it difficult is when we do panic and we do villainize people, and it makes people not hide symptoms, not want to share that they're ill. And so because they're deathly afraid of what's going to happen to them, because they see what's happening to anybody else, and we don't want that either.
Yeah, you don't want to go in a restaurant or a grocery store and cough. You better suck on cough drops if you have a cold. But see, when they have that test, then right now they don't have that test. So if you have symptoms that look like coronavirus, you might be asked to stay in your home for a couple of weeks, and that's a lot of hassle. And then people think you got it, and But as soon as they have that test, they can let them go and live. You don't have coronavirus, don't sweat it. Get back out there, and that'll really, really help. The coronavirus can live. Now I didn't know this until yesterday when I did more research for our podcast, but some scientists think that coronavirus can live on surfaces for up to 9 days. Some scientists are saying, and I would check that out. I need to check that out with CDC and see if they're agreeing with that or not, that it can stay on surfaces for 9 days. That'd be a little scary, because that means if somebody did have it and they were in an airplane, that you could get it from touching things on the airplane 9 days later.
Right. So just
like arm or things. And
wash your hands.
The CDC reported that coronavirus is probably going to become an epidemic in the United States. Scientists estimate that in a worst case scenario, and again, I don't want to scare you, because it's like there's a chance in a million that it would be really bad. But if it really got bad and it was year round instead of just seasonal, like most viral infections and all that sort of thing, we couldn't find tests or couldn't create antibodies. And so if a lot of things went wrong, 70% of the world could become infected with it. And there's 8.6 billion people in the world. So that would mean about 600 billion would be infected. And if the death rate is 5%, then about 300 million people in the world would die.
Exactly.
And so it could be really bad, but it's highly unlikely that it'll get that bad. Exactly. And CDC and all those people working together, and the authorities and the administration, the president, vice president, and all of those people, they put a large team in place immediately when they found out about it to protect our citizens as much as possible, and cutting off travel to and from infected areas, using quarantines, specific treatment locations, and they're using the full weight of the government to protect the health and safety of American people. And I trust that they're doing everything they can. For example, the president, like I said, the president of South Korea wanted to be politically correct, and so he didn't shut down travel, and we didn't care if we were politically correct or not, or who got ticked off, and so ours shut down travel immediately and got everybody mad at him for doing it. But we haven't had a single death, and like I said, in South Korea, they went from 51,000 last week to 160,000 yesterday, and it could be that they might have 50-60% that end up getting it. We don't know, but it's really bad there.
Exactly.
We're almost done. Okay, and so there's a coronavirus task force led by Health and Human Services and like I said, the CDC and Johns Hopkins and all those places. And we're staying ahead of the outbreak. We're requesting, the administration's requesting $2.5 billion just as a start to fight the coronavirus, because that's how much CDC said they needed right now. They didn't ask for any more, and the administration said we'll get whatever we want. If the Congress wants to give them $8 billion, give them $8 billion. But we'll use what we need to use, and we'll ask for more when we need it, and all that sort of thing. So we're taking it incredibly serious in the United States. We're the most aggressive country in the world at containing it. We're the safest place in the world to protect ourselves from that. Okay, I'm almost done. Let's see. I can skip a couple of these things. Some of these I already covered. Yeah, I've covered 15, 16, 17. Oh, yeah, here's one. Coronavirus, COVID-19 it's called. Coronavirus does spread more easily than the other coronavirus illnesses like SARS and MERS. And that's one problem with it. It spreads very easily. And it's not proven yet to be as deadly as those other two. One was 15% and one was 35%. And then point 20 is my conclusion. Life is what happens while we were busy making other plans. And so, a few months ago, none of us planned on this coronavirus coming in and messing things up. The stock market dropped 1,000 points in one day and 900 the next, and then it broke even the next, and it'll go back up. It's not going to keep going down. We're not going to have economic, people are trying to cause economic crisis and scares and all this sort of thing. So it may go down because, things are going to work out financially. And so it would be wise to plan ahead. We make some preparations, and then sort of, I'm not worried about it, other than I'm making precautions. I'm not going to. The American Airlines and the other airlines are going to get mad at me for saying I'm not going to fly unless I have to. But have some precautions and be careful and carry some hand wipes and stay away from people that are coughing but don't go shooting them or anything. And
exactly.
And there'll probably never be a cure for coronavirus. There might be, but if there's a vaccine, then you won't get it. Or if you got it, it would be so mild. I used to get the flu every year when I was young, and then I started getting a flu shot every year, and I haven't had the flu in about 35 years. And I credit, I do take a little zinc every day, and I credit getting a flu shot every year. As soon as they're available, I get one. And so that's really all I want to say is life happens when you're busy making other plans, but make some preparations. Don't assume the worst, but prepare yourself for the worst. Prepare yourself. You don't have to prepare yourself for the worst now because it's very extremely unlikely to happen, especially in America. But do make some plans and figure out, well, what would I do if it got to where,
have a plan of action in place.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And that's where I think having a faith group, whatever your religious beliefs are, getting together with people where you can pray together and help each other out. I think there'll be clumps of, if it got really horrible, I think there'd be clumps of 10, 20 people meeting and praying together and helping each other out and, giving each other food and things. I think, it would, there's things that you can do, in other words, other than just isolating.
Absolutely.
So I guess we covered it all.
And not spreading.
That was about an hour.
Yeah, and not spreading more panic. Exactly. Thank you so much, Paul, for doing all the research and for coming on to talk about this. I hope it helps allay some people's fears and helps them, be in that calm state we need to be in order to deal with our mental health challenges. And listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Roundtable with Dr. Paul Meier on Mental Health News Radio. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.